So welcome to Red Team. I posted one question about a tracheal abnormality, okay, and I didn't give any options for that question. So there was much confusion about what exactly it is, okay. So I will in this video, very extensively describe what all are the lesions that typically involve trachea, whether they are neoplastic, non-neoplastic, and how to differentiate them objectively. With there are one or two points which clearly differentiate between these lesions. So by the end of this video, you will gain this particular knowledge of how to differentiate between tracheal lesions. Okay, so this is one diagram that I've just drawn, okay, not to waste your time. So you can clearly see this diagram, okay. We have an anterior, okay, and trachea has an anterior bilateral walls and a posterior wall. Okay, if you see trachea, it's a normal cross-sectional diagram of trachea, okay, which you see in your axial sections of CT scan. So you see trachea is a typical of U shape, okay, and if you see posterior wall, it's basically what, it's straight, it's straight horizontal kind of thing. So if you see this U shape, this U involves the anterior and bilateral wall, and if I divide it into layers, so the innermost layer is your mucosa, okay, this is your lumen, okay, innermost layer is your mucosa. Then inner to mucosa you have a submucosa, that is this layer that is shaded, okay, this is your submucosa. And then inner to submucosa, or exterior to submucosa is this blue, thick blue line that I have drawn, is nothing but your hyaline cartilage. And this hyaline cartilage is that is absent in its posterior wall. So posterior wall, there is no hyaline cartilage, okay. Rather, if you see posterior wall, there is some red line that I have drawn, and that red line is nothing but your trachealis muscle, okay. So by the nature of anatomy, the trachea, okay, and this is how, so there are incomplete rings of cartilage in trachea, okay. And if I ask you what is the extent of trachea, that is, what is the longitudinal extent of trachea. So trachea extends, okay, trachea starts just below your cricoid cartilage, just below your cricoid cartilage. If this is the point of your cricoid cartilage, trachea starts here. And cricoid cartilage, if I'm not wrong, it is at the level of C6. Okay, so trachea starts from at this point, and ultimately at which point trachea extends. So trachea extends till the point of carina, okay, till the point of carina, trachea extends, okay, at this point. Up till this point, this is the extent of the trachea, and the bifurcation of trachea into two bronchi occurs at a vertebral level of T4 T5 intervertebral disc, if I'm not wrong. So up till this point we call it to be trachea, okay, this airway. Okay, now it is having what, it is having incomplete cartilage rings. Similarly, bronchi also have cartilage. So the word bronchiole, when do you call something bronchiole? Bronchiole is, you call something airway as a bronchiole when it loses cartilage. So all bronchi, they have cartilage in their wall, although it is not in it's not complete cartilage ring that surround them. It's what, there are tits and bits of cartilage in their wall, okay. But trachea characteristically has a U-shaped cartilage that is incomplete, and these are in the form of rings. So if you're seeing cartilage, you will see cartilage, tracheal cartilage to be like this in the form of these rings, okay. Now, okay, so the posterior wall of the trachea is basically what, it's elastic due to this muscle, elastic trachealis muscle, but definitely it is devoid of cartilage, so it is collapsible, okay. What is the normal length of tracheal? It is around 12 centimeter, okay. Now, importantly, if I look at this section, okay, this section of sagittal section of a CT scan, and in this section, you can clearly see this patient, has a in situ tracheostomy tube, okay. But what our aim of for this particular section of sagittal section is to understand what is the extent of trachea. So trachea arises below the cricoid cartilage, and if you remember, this cricoid cartilage is somewhere here, although it's not calcified, so it's not visible, okay. So because the tracheostomy is done what, subcricoid, or from, it is either subcricoid, or it is through the what, thyrocricoid membrane, which is, there is a membrane between thyroid cartilage, inferior border of thyroid cartilage, and the superior border of cricoid cartilage. So tracheostomy done through there. So we can assume that tracheostomy is done through what, either near the cricoid cartilage. But my point is that, so trachea basically is divided. Okay, it's important to divide trachea into intrathoracic part, intrathoracic, and extrathoracic part. And I'll just tell you why it is important to divide it. So intrathoracic and extrathoracic, since you know that it is inside the thorax and it is outside the thorax, so you need to know what is thorax. So thorax starts, what is the superior most extent of thorax? So superior most extent of thorax is your thoracic inlet, okay, through which your neck ultimately continues into thorax. So the thoracic inlet, and what is your thoracic inlet? So thoracic inlet is what? It's a slanting plane. It's a plane that is slanting. It's not a horizontal plane. It's rather a slanting plane. So it is like this. If you pass the thoracic inlet line, it would be something like this. Okay. And why it is so? Because your ribs, first rib, the superior border of your first rib is what? It's a part of thoracic inlet. And ribs are basically what? Ribs are like this. Ribs are never horizontal. They are slanting, anterior-posteriorly slanting. So that is why the part of the trachea that is above this line of thoracic inlet, we call it to be extrathoracic, and the part that is below the this thoracic inlet is your intrathoracic part. Okay, now if I ask you what is the longer part, so definitely the longer part is your intrathoracic part. Okay, so trachea is around 10 to 12 centimeter, but your intrathoracic part is around 6 to 9 centimeter, and your extrathoracic part is around 2 to 4 centimeter. So it is smaller. Okay, so one thing that we understood about the intra and extrathoracic part. Okay, now if you look closely at the the diagram that just I shown, okay, this diagram. So in this diagram you can clearly see that what is the shape of the trachea. So it's a horseshoe shape. It's a horseshoe shape. Okay, uh, another shape that it could be, it could be triangular in shape as well. Okay, triangular as well, and it also called to be inverted P shape. Okay, these are normal shapes that you may find in a normal person. Okay, now if you look closely, this particular posterior wall of trachea is flat here. It is flat here. Okay, now it has a significance. Why it has a significance? See, this is flat. Although it is flat, it can be concave. It can be convex also in a normal person. All would be normal. Slight concavity or convexity could be there. The reason being very clearly because when you are taking an image or when you are taking a scan, the patient is respiring also. Although we ask the patient to inspire and hold the breath, but still sometimes it happens. So you may find concavity and convexity of because when the air is going in, or when the patient is inspiring, it has a tendency, the trachea has a tendency to expand, and similarly when the air is going out, the trachea has a tendency to collapse. Okay, tendency to collapse. Now we will not go into the physiology why it collapses or it expands. Okay, uh, but definitely it's important to know that it is like this. Okay, and so what is the importance of this, of knowing this? That let's say if you are going to test on a CT scan that whether the patient has air trapping or not, so what type of scan do you do? So what and what finding you have on inspiratory scan for okay, for for which you require to identify whether that finding is due to air trapping or not. So that finding is your mosaic perfusion, and if you have mosaic perfusion, you need to rule out whether the finding of mosaic perfusion is due to air trapping or it's due to vascular disease. So to confirm whether it is due to air trapping or not, we need to go for a post expiratory scan, and in post expiratory scan I'll show you how does your trachea looks like. Okay, so yes, see this image. See this image. Now in this image you can clearly see this is the normal trachea. Okay, this is the normal trachea on the left. Okay, and if you see this trachea closely, okay, I'll zoom it for you. Okay, yeah. So if you see this trachea closely, it's almost round. Okay, it's almost round. So it must have been, patient might have inspired and hold the breath. Okay, and then patient has been asked to, undergo forceful expiration for a second image that we are showing. Okay, so if you see closely, the trachea at its anterior and lateral walls, okay, is little bit what having certain hyperdense structures. You can see this hyperdense structure or this hyperdense structure. Okay, see these cartilages may be calcified, then only they will appear. Okay, you may not. It is highly possible that cartilage is not calcified, so you will not see calcified cartilages. Okay, rather you will see a soft tissue thickening. Okay, so if you are seeing a soft tissue thickening, This means that it's not calcified. So it will appear as of like whenever it will appear calcified, then only soft tissue thickening would be absent. So typically in an older age we see calcified cartilage of trachea. Okay, it's like here you can see that cartilage is calcified here, okay, here also, but this part is less calcified. Okay, this part is less calcified, and typically the calcification is discontinuous. You will not see completely calcified like this. It will be continuously calcified. It will not be calcified like this. It will be calcified like this. Like there will be few parts that will be calcified, like here that is shown. And typically older age patients, they have calcified cartilage. Okay, so just like this. But when we ask the patient to expire, you can see clearly that tracheal diameter, it collapses. Tracheal diameter basically shrinks. Now it shrinks, but what part of trachea do you see to be collapsing? You see the posterior wall. Why? Because it is devoid of cartilage. So it's not stiff, it's soft. And it causes what? It tends to bulge inward. Okay, it tends to bulge inward. And that is why it becomes what? It will become, if you look from the side of the lumen, it will look like convex, and if you look away from the lumen, it will look like concave. So this bulging, anteriorly bulging posterior wall, is a normal finding in post expiratory scan. Okay, that is if the patient is asked to expire forcefully, you will see this posterior anteriorly bulging posterior tracheal membrane. Clear cut. Now another important point is that why it is important. It will be important when we discuss about tracheomalacia. So okay, so that is about this. Now another thing that I told you is the discontinuous cartilage calcification would be there. Okay, yeah. So if cartilage is not calcified, you will see soft tissue thickening. Okay, yes. And in typically older patients, typically females, okay, if you see a calcified cartilage, you may see a small although it's not that visible because of the resolution, but inner to cartilage is what your submucosa and mucosa are. So the soft tissue thickening that you have, whatever you have, is typically inner to this cartilage. Okay, inner to this cartilage. Okay, so next, so we have understood about the anatomy, and let me tell you one thing more. What is the normal diameters? So we are discussing normal AP diameter. Okay, let me just rub it. So what is the normal diameter? So this is the normal AP diameter. Okay, this is the AP diameter that we take. So normal AP, and what is the level that we take? So we take around 2 centimeter above the aortic arch. The normal AP diameter. Now it is different in your male and female. Okay, so there is a range. Okay, so there is a range, and the range is 13 to 25 or 27 in male, and it is around 10 to 21 and 23 in female. Now what is this 25 and 27? If you take the diameter in what, this is an axial section, you may also take the diameter in sagittal. Okay, sagittal. So will you take the diameter in what type of diameter you are taking, whether you're taking diameter in axial or sagittal. So if you take this diameter, this is the AP diameter, and this is in millimeters. This is in millimeters. Remember this thing. Okay, this is in millimeters. Okay, now this is the minimum range 13 and 10. What is the maximum range? So maximum range is different in different sections, and these sections are what, the first number is what is your coronal section, and the second number is what is your sagittal sections. Okay, these are not axial diameter. First of all, if you want me to write the axial diameter, so on axial diameter we typically take 3 centimeter as a cutoff. Okay, to diagnose tracheobronchomegaly. I have shown it on in previous video also, that if it is more than 3 centimeter in AP diameter on axial section, 2 centimeter above the then it is called as tracheobronchomegaly. But these sections, these are taken on coronal and sagittal. Sagittal diameters are a little bit large, so the cutoff is large. So 25 on the coronal and 27 on the sagittal in male, and 21 and 23 are the cutoffs for in your for females. Okay, so that is about the diameters. Okay, now next important point that we need to know is, once we have read this, okay, so about that about the pathologies. Okay, so if you talk about the pathologies, okay, so let me divide the pathologies into So tracheal lesions can be divided into two parts, to be precise. Okay, these tracheal lesions could be divided into two parts. Now these tracheal lesions either can be causing luminal narrowing, or these tracheal lesions could be causing luminal enlargement. Now I have discussed already one, a particular lesion, that is your Mounier-Cohn syndrome, which causes tracheobronchomegaly. I have discussed that. Okay, and so we'll not discuss that particular lesion. Okay, luminal enlargement, and there are only two lesions. One is your diverticulum, that is there. Okay, so predominantly what we are going to discuss is about the luminal narrowing, and we divide these lesions into two parts, whether they are neoplastic lesions or whether they are non-neoplastic lesions. And we'll start our discussion from your non-neoplastic lesions. The question was about a non-neoplastic lesion. And very briefly, within 1 or 2 points, we will discuss about what all these lesions are. Okay, so let's go about. So in non-neoplastic lesion, okay, in non-neoplastic lesion, the first important thing that we are going to discuss about is your tracheomalacia. Tracheomalacia. Now, what exactly is tracheomalacia? See, tracheomalacia typically is an abnormality. What is abnormal in trachea? First of all, in tracheomalacia. So what is abnormal? Now, abnormal thing is in your cartilage. Your cartilage is either deficient, okay, either it is deficient, deficient means it is less, or either it is destroyed. Now, it is deficient by means of deficiency means that it is inherently deficient. This means that one cause of this particular would be congenital. So it could be congenital. Other possibility is that it is destroyed due to some inflammatory process, some destructive process. So there will be some secondary causes. Okay, some causes that are basically that are not primarily intrinsically causing tracheomalacia, rather that is a different disease that caused tracheomalacia due to destruction of the cartilage. So any chronic inflammatory disorder can lead to this. Example, any chronic infection. Okay, chronic infection, COPD, polychondritis. Okay, wherever you can see cartilage to be destroyed. Even your this Mounier-Cohn syndrome, which we discussed, it can lead to what? It can lead to in secondarily it causes what? It causes cartilage destruction. Okay, and if any, let's say, any mass is there which is directly invading into trachea, okay, from, like, for example, esophagus or thyroid mass, that can also lead to what? Cartilage destruction. Okay, so all those causes ultimately will cause what? They will cause cartilage to get destroyed, and basically the the stiffness of the trachea that was there in its anterior and lateral walls, it will go down. So what will happen now? The trachea, if the tracheal cartilage is deficient, what will happen? This will lead to what? This will lead to what? Collapsible trachea. Collapsible trachea. That trachea has a tendency to collapse. And if I ask you, what is the phase of respiration in which the trachea normally collapses? So it collapses in expiration. So when the patient expires, okay, so if you see the trachea of this particular patient, it has a tendency to collapse. Okay, now important point is this, that we need to know, okay, is that if we already understood about one thing, that in post expiratory scan we normally see a trachea that collapses, typically its posterior wall. So what we see in a normal, let's say this, okay, this particular patient which is normal. So normally on expiration we see what? The AP diameter of this patient's trachea is to reduce. Okay, it reduced due to posterior anterior bulging of this posterior tracheal membrane. Now in tracheomalacia also the same thing will happen. So how will you differentiate whether it's a normal trachea or it's a trachea of a tracheomalacia patient? Okay, how will you differentiate that? So is there any cutoff, okay, for this AP diameter? Let's say if it decreases down to this level, okay, then we call it to be tracheomalacia. Okay, so then it was studied that all those spectrum of the normal patient, that if you ask the patient to expire, okay, and the tracheal diameter decreases in the AP dimension. So it is seen that there are few patients in which this posterior membrane can even touch it can even touch the anterior wall of trachea normally, and this can happen normally. So there are few patients in which there can be complete collapse of trachea. This posterior wall can completely touch the anterior wall. Okay, so almost complete collapse can happen, and this can be normal. This is normal in those patients. Okay, so can you diagnose tracheomalacia in these patients? Because it is seen normally also. Then what will become the cutoff? Okay, there are few patients in which there will be complete uh, anterior bulging of the tracheal membrane. So can you call tracheomalacia in that? No, we cannot call. And if you ask me that what is this extensive bulging is called, so it is called what? Excessive dynamic airway collapse. Excessive dynamic airway collapse. And it is totally normal in few patients. It is excessive, it is dynamic because it is happening during expiration, and it's a airway collapse. Okay, so how to differentiate between this and tracheomalacia? So the only point of difference is what? Symptoms. You can only differentiate it on the basis of symptoms. See, if it has developed due to destruction of the cartilage, okay, this means that before destruction of the cartilage, patient's was normal. Okay, now the patient is start to have symptoms. What kind of symptoms patient will have? So patient will have what kind of symptoms? Patient will have symptoms of obstruction. Okay, symptoms that start due to obstruction. See, your trachea, what it collapses during expiration, it is normal during inspiration. Okay, if you have symptoms and you're seeing this phenomena, okay, you're seeing this phenomena during expiration, this will be called as tracheomalacia. If you are not having any symptoms and you are not having any symptom, and I see your post expiratory scan or expiratory scan, and still the collapse is there, whatever degree of collapse it is, if it is not symptomatic, it is not tracheomalacia to be labeled like this. Okay, so the symptoms is something that differentiates. Okay, another important point is that what kind of symptom patient will have. So patient will have what? Patient has obstruction. Now due to obstruction, what will happen? The accumulation of secretion is going to happen distal to this, and that is why if there is an accumulation of collections distal to this, what will happen? Infections are going to start. So patient will tell you that I have recurrent infections that is there, and due to recurrent infection and obstruction cycle, bronchiectasis is going to develop, but that is a different part. So what we need to know is that if there is a symptomatic patient with collapsible trachea, okay, then it is a tracheomalacia. That's it. Now another possibility, so this is something objective that I just told you, although there's a tendency of AP collapse, anterior posterior collapse in normal expiration, but since cartilage is also destroyed, so in tracheomalacia there will be a side to side collapse also. Okay, side to side collapse also, but that is not objective. Okay, you will see some degree of side to side collapse even in normal patient. The only objective criteria that is there is the symptoms. Okay, so that was tracheomalacia. Now next particular lesion that we're going to discuss is your tracheal stenosis. Okay, that is your tracheal stenosis. Okay, now tracheal stenosis, we know that there'll be some luminal narrowing. That is what is tracheal stenosis. So I divide tracheal stenosis. Now what could be the cause of tracheal stenosis? Okay, now it could be congenital, or it could be acquired also. Now tracheal stenosis, it could be, it is due to what? It's due to a ring shaped tracheal cartilage. Ring shaped tracheal cartilage. So in ring shaped tracheal cartilage, what will happen? There'll be complete ring. Okay, that is causing stenosis. What is the cause of acquired cause? So what is the most common acquired cause of tracheal stenosis? It is intubation. It is your intubation. So tracheal stenosis typically develops post intubation. And now patient might have been intubated, in this particular surgery, and when the patient is extubated, patient developed tracheal stenosis. Patient developed what? Worsening of the SpO2. and that is due to when the patients get extubated, there is a tracheal stenosis is there, and there's a collapse in the trachea, which causes what? Worsening of the SpO2. That patient is not able to recover, okay, or the delayed recovery is there. So that is what is a post-intubation tracheal stenosis. Now, important point is that if patient develops, tracheal stenosis just after the extubation or just after a particular surgery due to intubation, then it will be acute. Either it could be acute, or patient has a history of recurrent intubation, or the patient has a history of tracheostomy or intubation for a long time. Now that this patient has inflammation going on in his tracheal wall for a long time, so patient will develop chronic tracheal stenosis. I'll tell you how. See, okay, so why it causes? It causes due to pressure necrosis. The pathogenesis is pressure necrosis. Okay, so this is your trachea, let's say, and there's an insertion of this tube. So this tube is inserted. Okay, and this tube, there's a balloon that is there. This balloon is inflated to fix this tube. So this balloon, what does it causes? Okay, so this is the tip of the trachea, tip of this tube. So balloon is around around 1 to 2 centimeter, if I'm not wrong, 1.5 to 2.5 centimeter proximal to the tip. Okay, there is a balloon, and this balloon exerts a pressure over the tracheal wall, which causes what? Pressure necrosis. And due to this pressure necrosis, what will happen? That there will be edema happening. Okay, swelling will be there. Okay, in the wall, and due to swelling, what will happen? Inflammation will be going on, and similar inflammation would be going on. Let's say if it's a tracheostomy, then at the port, at the entry point of tracheostomy could be, it might be inflamed. Or similarly, there is this tip might be sometimes stuck at the anterior tracheal wall. Okay, it might be like this. The tip might be like this. So it might be stuck at this anterior tracheal wall. At this point, might be inflammation might be going on. So these are the common sites of the inflammation. Okay. So by this, and if you ask me what is this balloon, okay, what is this balloon? This balloon is around, same length of this 1 to 2 centimeter length is there. Okay, so 1 to 2 centimeter part of trachea, is there. And if you ask me what is the ideal location of the of this intubation tube or endotracheal intubation tube is there. So ideally it is, around 4 to 7 centimeter proximal to carina is what is the ideal position of the intubation tube should be there. So this means that clearly that, let's say, carina must be somewhere down there. Okay, and if this tube is inserted normally, it should be around, somewhere here, that 4 to 7 centimeter proximal to carina. Okay, so the tip is here, and the balloon is here. Okay, the balloon is here, and balloon is exerting pressure over the tracheal wall. So this means that the inflammation should extend for around 2 centimeter length. The extent of the inflammation should be around 2 centimeter. Okay, and it should be around what? This means that it is 2 centimeter proximal to the tip. So this means that this part where the inflammation is, it is in what part of trachea? Extrathoracic or intrathoracic? So it is likely to lie in extrathoracic part. It's likely to lie in extrathoracic part. Okay, so extrathoracic part is there, and it will be little bit longer. Okay, it will be around 2 to 3 centimeter or 1 to 2 centimeter longer. Inflammation would be there. So the stenosis develops due to, this particular pressure necrosis. If it develops in acute setting, what will have? You will have, and it is exerted what? That, this, if this is a cross section, the balloon will be exerting pressure everywhere. So it will be circumferential, it will cause circumferential thickening. So in acute phase, there will be circumferential thickening. Whereas if it is chronic, or if the patient has a long history of intubation, or patient has a history of multiple intubations, in that case, there are multiple episodes of pressure necrosis that have happened. So what will happen? There will be fibrosis start to develop. Fibrosis would be there. Element of fibrosis would be there due to chronic inflammation. And this fibrosis will cause what? This will cause, if this was a trachea earlier, this will cause what? The fibrosis is gonna cause this tracheal diameter, that is your side to side diameter, to decrease, and this AP diameter, this is the AP diameter, to increase. So the trachea will become somewhat like this. Okay, it will develop like this, and another important point is that there will be cartilage abnormality that you would see. So there, in chronic post intubation tracheal stenosis, you will not see any acute edema that you see in acute phase. You will not see any edema or any swelling in your mucosa or submucosa, but you will see what, a cartilage and abnormality due to fibrosis. Okay, so cartilage would be abnormal, so you will see cartilage to be abnormal here, like this. It will be irregular, and the shape of the trachea would be like this. Okay, shape of that is your coronal. If I ask you what is the coronal diameter of the trachea is gonna decrease, and sagittal diameter of the trachea is gonna increase. So this will be the abnormality that you will see in the what? Now the same abnormality. Okay, so this is the abnormality that you will see in your chronic post intubation tracheal stenosis. So you will see a irregular dysmorphic cartilage. Okay, and you will see this particular shape of the trachea. So I'm going to show it on the image. Okay, and in acute phase you will see what, narrowing of the trachea would be there, but it will be what, it will be inflammatory narrowing. It will be thickened diffusely circumferentially. Okay, so this, see this particular CT scan of this patient. So this patient had, see this trachea. Now this trachea, it is somewhat like this, that coronal, although it's an axial section, but coronal diameter of this particular trachea is reduced, and AP diameter is a little bit increased. And you see, if you see this particular trachea, the cartilage, they are calcified, and these cartilage are what, little bit, they are not regular. The cartilage are what, irregular, so they are dysmorphic cartilage. Okay, so this patient had multiple episodes of intubation, developed what, tracheal stenosis, and this is, basically this VRT image of this patient. So you can see that, in the coronal, it's a coronal plane. So in coronal plane, you can clearly see the coronal diameter to be reduced. It's reduced. And if you see closely, the length of the stenosis, this is the length of the stenosis. So it is around what? It is around 1 to 2 centimeter. It's for a significant length. And if you see that these are the lungs, these are the level of your lungs. So this trachea is what, above the level of lungs. Okay, this means that apex of the lungs is finished here. So what part of trachea is involved? So this is what, this is your extra thoracic trachea. Extra thoracic trachea we are dealing with, and extra thoracic trachea is what, stenosed for a length of 1 to 2 centimeter, and you can clearly see this narrowing appears to be inflammatory, and that is why, it's post intubation chronic tracheal stenosis that we are dealing with. Okay, post intubation chronic tracheal stenosis we are dealing with. Okay, so that was about the tracheal stenosis that we discussed. Okay, now the next particular section that we're going to discuss about is, next thing that we need to discuss is about your let's discuss it with the, with the image. Okay, let's discuss with this image. Okay, so if you look closely at this image, okay, look closely at this image, and in this image you can see, I just shown you tracheal stenosis, and I told you that on cross sectional this trachea looks like this. Okay, in tracheal stenosis trachea becomes like this, in chronic tracheal stenosis to be specific. Now this trachea is also like this only. Okay, just like this only. But can you see, do you think, do you see any particular thickening of trachea? Trachea is thickened. This trachea is thickened. So answer is no, trachea is not thickened, but definitely the AP diameter of this trachea is increased, and the coronal diameter, although it's not a coronal image, but definitely by looking at the basically the side to side collapse that is there, you can see that coronal diameter would be, less in this particular trachea. Okay, so that is there. Now look at this particular patient's chest X-ray. So this is this patient's chest X-ray also. So in this patient, let me zoom this also. Okay, look at the trachea of this patient. If you look closely at this trachea, okay, you can clearly see this is the line of the trachea. I'm drawing along the tracheal wall. Okay, this is a line of trachea. Okay, so this is your trachea. Now if you see closely this trachea, and these are the apex of the lungs. These are the apex of the lungs. Let us draw a line through the apex. So this must be your extrathoracic trachea, and this must be your intrathoracic trachea broadly. Okay, so this is your intrathoracic trachea. This is your extrathoracic trachea. Okay, So you can clearly see there is a narrowing. There is a narrowing of trachea. You can see this narrowing, and this narrowing, you see the coronal diameter is decreased. Okay, coronal diameter of this patient is decreased. Okay, and this is the same patient of which we just saw the CT scan also. So, and the part of the trachea that you're seeing is intrathoracic. You can see that narrowing is in the intrathoracic part. So what we are dealing with, we are dealing with a disease entity that is involving intrathoracic trachea, and the coronal diameter is decreased. And on CT scan, okay, this patient is showing what? AP diameter to be increased and coronal diameter to be decreased. So what is this entity that we are dealing with? Okay, so remember this thing. Till now, what we discussed about the tracheomalacia, or we discussed about your tracheal stenosis, we are dealing with the trachea that is outside the thorax, above the thorax, extrathoracic. Now we are dealing with this entity that is intrathoracic, involving intrathoracic trachea. Okay, and it is causing the trachea to collapse, collapse the trachea side to side, causing increase in the AP diameter. This trachea is what? It's a typical shape of this trachea, so it's a saber sheath trachea. Saber sheath trachea. Okay, saber sheath trachea. And if you see closely, the wall is not thickened. The wall is not thickened. Wall thickness is normal in this particular patient. Normal. And why it is normal, and why only intrathoracic part is involved? Because this trachea, saber sheath trachea, is typically associated with what typical disease? It's typically associated with COPD. It is associated with COPD. And what happens in COPD? In COPD, there is an increase in intrathoracic pressure. So there is an increase in intrathoracic pressure, and due to this intrathoracic pressure, only the intrathoracic part of the trachea collapses and extrathoracic part is spared. So that is why if you're seeing this particular trachea like this, and you are seeing only intrathoracic part involved with normal wall thickness, the diagnosis becomes what? It becomes saber sheath trachea. So you can clearly see the coronal diameter to be decreased. And if you look at the sagittal image of this patient, so on sagittal image, what you will see, the AP diameter of this patient is what? Increased. So on sagittal plane will measure what? AP diameter. So sagittal diameter is one of what? Increase. So typically it is seen that sagittal diameter becomes what? It becomes 1.5 times the coronal diameter. And that is when it happens. So this becomes a criteria. So I'm writing it. Your sagittal diameter, I'm writing it here. So sagittal diameter becomes 1.5 times the coronal diameter, then we call it to be saber sheath trachea. And that is what you will see in this patient of COPD. Okay, so that is about the saber sheath trachea and the intrathoracic trachea that is involved. Now, okay, so these are the three entities that we discussed. Now we'll simply moving towards some inflammatory diseases. Okay, and in inflammatory disease, I'll discuss image by image. Okay, so let's discuss one image. Okay. Let's discuss this image. Okay, so if you see closely at this image, okay, what exactly it is? Okay, so what we are seeing here is, do you think thickening? Do you see any thickening? Is there any thickening? Yes or no? Answer is yes, there is a thickening. Now if you look closely, where is the thickening? Thickening is where? So thickening, if you see, is what? It is involving what? Only the cartilaginous part. Only cartilaginous part is thickened. Only cartilaginous part is thickened. See, this is the cartilaginous part, which my line is there. Okay, so only cartilaginous part is thickened, and since only the cartilaginous part is thickened and the posterior tracheal wall is spared, posterior tracheal wall is spared. So only cartilage wall is thickened. Now in cartilaginous part also, if you see closely, the calcified part is visible and this calcified part is thickened. Okay, the cartilage here is thickened. You can see. So the cartilage part is thickened. Cartilage thickening is there. So if you see this particular scenario, then definitely you are dealing with what? You are dealing with what? Cartilaginous edema, and that is what we call as what? Polychondritis. Chondritis. We have chondritis because we have cartilaginous inflammation. Now important thing is that there is a disease entity which causes what? Cartilaginous inflammation in wherever there is cartilage in the body. So it is what? It is polychondritis, but because it is affecting cartilage at multiple locations and it is relapsing. This means that it has a tendency to relapse. So we are dealing with a disease entity that is your relapsing polychondritis. Now it will affect not only cartilage of trachea, it will involve cartilage of joints, it will involve cartilage of ear, it will involve cartilage of nose. Okay, so multiple cartilages are involved, and that is why. So, and you will see what only cartilage is part that is thickened. Okay, so cartilage is there in your intrathoracic as well as extrathoracic. So both particular part of trachea is involved. So both tracheas are involved, intra as well as extra, and you will see cartilage thickening. Posterior tracheal membrane will be spared. So that is what is your relapsing polychondritis. That is one entity that we need to know. Okay, yeah, even bronchi can also get affected. Why? Because bronchi also have cartilage. Okay, but there are cartilages at multiple locations in the body that are affected in relapsing polychondritis. And important thing to note down is that if you see closely at this thickening is a smooth thickening. It's not a nodular thickening. This is a smooth thickening. Okay, and only the cartilage on the part of the cartilage is thickened. Okay, so if you see at the coronal or particular sagittal section, you will see a thickened cartilage anteriorly. Okay, anteriorly on sagittal section, and on coronal section you will see bilaterally you will see thickened cartilage. It will be like cylindrical thickening would be there. This is a terminology that is used. Okay, that is in your relapsing polychondritis. Okay, now next image. Next image, if we see, okay, let's see this particular image. Now in this image you can clearly see there are two images that are shown. One image is of your CT scan axial section, and another image is your it's a VRT image that is specifically drawn image for the trachea. Okay, so if you look closely at this particular image, do you see any thickening? First question is, do you see any thickening? Is the thickening present? Definitely yes, we have a thickening, and this thickening is almost causing the tracheal stenosis. It's there, tracheal lumen is completely reduced down to nothing. Okay, so what do you see? Do you see thickening? Is there any selective involvement of a particular part of a trachea, or the complete trachea is involved? Circumferential involvement is there, or there is a any particular sparing is there or no? So definitely there is circumferential involvement. There is circumferential involvement. Okay, there is no sparing here. That is important. We are not seeing any sparing here. All part, complete involvement is there. Okay, complete involvement is there. It is completely involved. Now if you look closely, okay, if you look closely, what part of trachea it is? It is intrathoracic part or it's extrathoracic part? So definitely it is intrathoracic. We are seeing lung. Okay, now can it be and now you look at this particular image. Okay, this particular image, can it be can it be a tracheal stenosis due to post intubation? And if you look closely, this would be an acute tracheal stenosis. It will be an acute tracheal stenosis because you see that there is inflammatory edema. Okay, post intubation. It could be, but it is not here. Why? Because patient didn't give any history of intubation. Rather, what you are seeing is it's basically Wegener's granulomatosis that has caused this tracheal stenosis. It's the Wegener's, and Wegener's will look like what? It will look like this only. There will be circumferential involvement. All part of the trachea is involved. Okay. Now, typically, if you ask me what part of trachea is involved, so trachea is involved subglottically, but it doesn't mean that other part of trachea is not involved. Now this subglottic trachea is involved, but even larynx can involved in rare cases, and even bronchial tree can be involved. That is proximal bronchi will be involved. So larynx and bronchi, they both can be involved also. But typically, if you ask me the classical case that we have in Wegener's, it is subglottic involvement of the trachea, and involvement would be of complete circumferential wall. It will not be of sparing. There will not be any sparing of a particular part, and rather more important thing is that it will be diffuse thickening, circumferential thickening will be there like this, and there will not be sparing. One thing is this, and second most point is that it is smooth thickening. It is smooth thickening. So if you had got a history of intubation, and I didn't tell you that patient also has cystic lesions, cavitating lesions in the lung, I would have called it an acute tracheal stenosis due to post intubation also, because the image is same, the history will change things. Okay, that is about this. Now look at the next image. So in next image, Okay, this image which we discussed. Okay, look at this image. This is the image that we show, which I posted on the Telegram group. Now, if you see this particular image, let me zoom this image also. Let me zoom this image also. Okay, now see, look at the trachea. So first question two is, first question is there any thickening? Okay, why I'm asking that always, there is a thickening or not, because in silver shield trachea there is no thickening. Okay, so is there thickening? Definitely yes, thickening is there. Is there any particular sparing? Is there particular part of the trachea spared? Answer is yes. If you see posterior part of the trachea, it's spared here. Okay, it's spared here. Now, what type of thickening? What type of thickening it is? Is it a smooth thickening or it's a nodular thickening? So it's a nodular thickening. It's not a smooth thickening. You can see multiple nodules, multiple nodules. Okay, and you are seeing it in the anterior wall. You are seeing somewhat of the nodules in the lateral wall also. Okay, now if you look closely, this is the cartilage that is calcified, and it is discontinuously calcified here. These are some sheets of cartilage that are calcified. Okay, and if you see closely, inner to the cartilage would be the most exterior part. Okay, most exterior part. What is adventitia? Adventitia outside the cartilage is nothing but the fat, and you are seeing fat. This is your fat, what is shown. Okay, so this is the fat that is shown. Okay, so this is the fat, mediastinal fat, that is surrounding the trachea. Inner to that is your cartilage that is there, and inner to this cartilage is what is soft tissue thickening that is shown. So we have some abnormality, that is your nodular thickening, that is there in what? Nodular thickening is what? It's there in your what? In submucosal part. It's not involving the cartilage. Cartilage is spared. So there is a cartilage sparing. So if cartilage is spared, this means what? Relapsing polychondritis is out. So it is involving submucosal space or mucosal space. So there is some deposition in the submucosal or mucosal area, and it is a nodular thickening. Now remember this thing: whenever you will have a nodular thickening involving submucosal area and there is a sparing of posterior tracheal membrane, the answer is what? Answer is your tracheo. Let me write it. Uh, One sec. Yeah. Yes, this is. So the name of the disease is tracheobronchopathia osteochondroplastica. Okay, tracheobronchopathia osteochondroplastica. This is a typical spotter. Okay, that may come up or may show up in exam. That is there, that you are seeing sparing of the posterior tracheal membrane, and you are seeing what anterior and bilateral walls of trachea showing nodular thickening involving some mucosal space. Okay, you should think of this. And rather, had it been a relapsing polychondritis, it would have been a smooth thickening. That is more important, and there would have been any history of other cartilages also affected. So this is what? This is your basically what? Submucosal, and it is calcified. If you see these nodules are what? These nodules are also calcified, ossified or calcified, whatever you call them. They are ossified. These nodules, these are what? Ossified deposits of what? These nodules are ossified. So these are this calcification is what? It's separate from the already existing tracheal cartilage. Okay, so that is why this disease is. And this is the spotter. Just whenever you see these features, just mark this answer as tracheobronchopathia osteochondroplastica. So we discussed about Wegener's, we discussed about this disease, we discussed about relapsing polychondritis. One disease is left, and that is what? That is your amyloidosis, that can also involve it. Okay, so this is particular disease, that is your amyloidosis. This is amyloidosis. Now, it would be a little bit difficult. Okay, why? See, if you see, okay, again I'll ask one question: is there any thickening? Answer is definitely yes, we have thickening. Is there any sparing of a particular part? You can clearly see there's a sparing. Yes, there's a sparing. Sparing is of the posterior part, and if you see that anterior and lateral wall is thickened. Okay, is the thickening nodular or smooth? So definitely is a smooth thickening. It's a smooth thickening. It's a smooth thickening. Okay, now remember this thing. It's amyloidosis, and obviously on the basis of this particular thickening, you cannot diagnose the patient with amyloidosis. Now what amyloidosis have? So I have explained amyloidosis in one particular video as well. Now what exactly amyloidosis presents with? So amyloidosis has three particular patterns, in which one pattern you have diffuse alveolar septal amyloidosis, in which you have multiple nodules, central lobular nodules, okay, GGOs, consolidations, okay. And an important feature to be considered regarding amyloidosis is, just like tracheobronchopathy osteochondroplastica, we have calcified nodules in submucosal space. Here also we have calcification. So calcification of these deposits in amyloidosis, what is deposited? Amyloid protein is deposited, and this amyloid protein is calcified. Remember this thing, calcification would be present in amyloidosis. Remember this thing, okay. Now if you ask me whether it is 100% that calcification would be there, no, it's not 100%. There definitely there will be some part that will be non-calcified. Now this amyloidosis, if there are three pattern: diffuse alveolar septal, which I discussed, okay, that is involvement of the lung. But this second particular pattern was there, that is your tracheobronchial amyloidosis. And whenever the patient has tracheobronchial amyloidosis, primarily lung of the patient typically are normal, and what you will see that tracheobronchial tree is involved. Trachea is affected, okay, your primary bronchi are affected, okay. So, and what you see that in their wall, let's say this is the tracheal wall, okay, or if this is the bronchial wall, or whatever it is, you will see multiple deposits, and these deposits are where they are in the submucosal area. You are seeing these deposits, and these deposits are what? These deposits are calcified. These deposits are calcified. You are seeing calcified or ossified deposits in the wall of the trachea. And another important point is that, let's say this is the cross section of the trachea, okay, this is the membrane, and this is the trachea, okay. You can see these deposits in any particular pattern, whether these deposits would be involving, let's say, anywhere they could be seen. You can see these deposits like this. Even they can involve your posterior tracheal membrane, or it is also possible that there is a circumferential thickening also. So you may also see a circumferential thickening that is there. So it could be circumferential thickening, or these could be isolated deposits that are there, and they could be involving the whole of the trachea as well, or whole of the tracheobronchial tree. Like from the trachea to the bronchi, it could be completely affected. Like this part, everything could be affected, okay. And circumferential thickening would be there. There is possibility that this can be spared. There is a possibility that this could be involved, okay. So I'm not asking you, this patient, that I'm not telling you that I'll never give this patient this without history, okay. This patient cannot be given to you without history, unless you are given this particular history of amyloidosis. This patient cannot be given, because it will be difficult to without there is no calcification. So it's a little bit atypical case, but you will remember this particular thing, that whenever you're seeing calcified deposits there in the submucosal space, okay, and it is involving what? Anterior lateral wall also, it can also involve posterior wall, then think of amyloidosis. So if we look at this particular which we just told, that it is what this is this particular diagram, this particular CT scan, you can clearly see that there are multiple nodular calcified deposits what in anterior and bilateral walls, okay. So can it be amyloidosis? Definitely it can be amyloidosis. Definitely it can be amyloidosis, and amyloidosis becomes a close DD of this patient, okay. But remember this thing, amyloidosis can involve posterior wall as well. So you might see a deposit here as well. So you have to scan this patient in and out, okay, to look for other nodules that are there. You should also look for lung involvement. You should also look for okay, bronchial tree completely, where you might see other involvement, okay. So that is important to rule out amyloidosis. Then you call it to be tracheobronchopathy osteoplastica. Why it is tracheobronchopathy osteoplastica? Because this particular nodular pattern, although it can be in amyloidosis, but here it is particularly sparing what? It's sparing your posterior tracheal membrane, okay. That is an important point that goes in favor of that. But amyloidosis definitely is a close DD of this patient, okay. So that was about all these disorders, okay, that can involve this. So you can involve, you may definitely see this amyloidosis, okay. Now amyloidosis can also involve concentric thickening, that I just told you. And but typically the first thing that should come in your mind is your tracheobronchopathy osteoplastica with this particular image. Okay, we have discussed extensively about Mounier-Kuhn syndrome in previous videos as well. Okay, so if I don't think anything is left, one thing that is left, yes, exactly, it is your neoplastic lesions that are importantly, neoplastic lesions are left. So, okay, if you ask me, what is the most common benign tumor that is there? I'll just briefly discuss about them. Most common benign tumor that is there. Okay, I will discuss these tumors. Okay, in typically lung tumors, we have a section in lung tumors. Okay, about that exophytic or endophytic lesions. So endophytic lesions we have their papillomas and all. So most common benign tumor of the trachea is your what? It's your squamous papilloma. It's a squamous papilloma. And if you ask me what is the most common malignant lesion, primary malignant lesion of trachea, it is squamous cell carcinoma. Okay, what is the second most common malignant lesion? So it is your adenoid cystic carcinoma. Adenoid cystic carcinoma. So it comes at second most common. Now, important point that you need to understand, we'll discuss squamous papilloma in some other video in lung tumors. What is important to understand about is your adenoid cystic carcinoma. Okay, now remember this thing, adenoid cystic carcinoma, what part of trachea it involves? So it involves what? Upper trachea. Remember this thing. Upper trachea is what it involves. And if you ask me what is squamous cell carcinoma involves, so squamous cell carcinoma involves what? Distal trachea. Distal trachea. Okay, now adenoid cystic carcinoma, what part of the trachea it involves? You have to remember this thing in your head. It is posterolateral wall. Posterolateral wall of trachea it involves. Remember this thing. So if this is your trachea, okay, if this is your trachea, you will see a bulging tissue here. Okay, and remember this thing, these are locally invasive tumors. Okay, so can invade the surrounding structure as well. Okay, so if you see this malignant mass that is there involving posterolateral wall, typically it should be, and it is involving upper trachea, it is involving, so it's basically adenoid cystic carcinoma. So that is about the malignancy that it commonly trachea involves. Okay, there are certain infections also. Infection, if I talk about infection, common infection, although it is very rare for this particular infection to typically involve trachea only. So trachea per se is very rarely involved by this infection, that is your tuberculosis. Although patient can develop tracheal tuberculosis definitely, but TB only involving trachea is rare. And okay, and what part of trachea it involves? It involves distal trachea. It can, with distal trachea, it can also involve what? Primary bronchi. It can also involve primary bronchi. So let me write this. Okay, distal trachea, and what it will cause? So it will cause what? It will cause circumferential wall thickening. So there is no particular sparing here, but this circumferential wall thickening would be what? Asymmetric or symmetric? It will be asymmetric and irregular. Okay, and it will ultimately come down to stricture also, later form stricture. Okay, so that is what is seen in tuberculosis. Okay, just like anywhere else, it's a chronic inflammatory disease. Okay, which can involve trachea, so it can cause. So whenever you have in this particular developing countries, you have this particular thing, and you do not have any history of intubation and all. Okay, so you should first think of tracheal TB if this particular thing is there, and okay, that circumferential wall thickening is there, irregular thickening is there, and there's a luminal narrowing, which will ultimately enter into convert into stricture. So TB can spread to trachea also, by aerogenous route or direct spread also, because trachea surrounding the trachea would be nodes, and nodes is a common, most common particular involvement of the trachea is there through lymph nodes. So your TB would be involving the lymph node, which can lead to direct spread to trachea, or it could be aerogenous spread from the lungs. But definitely trachea can involve, but primarily only trachea involvement in TB is rare. It's commonly associated with other particular lung involvement would also be there. And what you see a circumferential wall thickening that is causing luminal narrowing, which can later develop into stricture. There are two more important that we'll discuss in when we'll discuss the infections only. Okay, so one is your aspergillus. So aspergillus also involves trachea and bronchi. It causes aspergillus tracheobronchitis is there. Another infection is what? Your rhinoscleroma. Rhinoscleroma. Rhinoscleroma, it's basically rhinoscleromatosis is something, the disease that it causes. So it typically involves what? It involves your paranasal sinuses and your nasal cavity, although it's a Klebsiella infection. It's caused by Klebsiella. Okay, and it causes this, so it can involve trachea also. It's only something, it's something that you need to know for only academic purpose, but it's rare right nowadays, and it's commonly involves the immunocompromised patients. Similarly, fungal infection also involves the immunocompromised patients only. So, but aspergillus causes tracheobronchitis. So if you have an infection of aspergillosis, you know, suspicion of aspergillosis with a lung involvement, think of tracheal involvement as well. Okay, so that is all about the tracheal lesions, and we discussed in detail, and I don't think any particular, we all have now objective findings to, characterize these lesions and differentiate between these lesions. Okay, in a nice way. So thanks a lot, and please subscribe this channel if you do not have, and join the Telegram group for daily quiz that we have. Thank you.